Welcome back to Garden Wise Adventures. So today we have a special treat. We're at the Krishna farm with Michael. I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
Not many do. It's Michael Cundick.
Cundick.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing here at the Krishna farm.
Yeah, so I've been an avid regenerative, just want the world to be more beautiful and help support local farmers and get fresh food into people. That's been my life for the last 8 years. I used to be in a lot of bands, and that was my whole life, and learned about these amazing regenerative permaculture and just conscious ethical systems that are improving nature while meeting people's needs. So that whole concept was just like, oh my gosh, that would solve 90% of our problems if we really took that seriously. So I started an organization to help get musicians and artists behind the local food movement, and then very quickly got held to the fire and said, you got to learn how to do this yourself too, dude, or it's not going to stick. So I've learned how to farm and garden over the last 8 years. My wife and I got certified in permaculture out in California under Warren Brush. Came back to Utah, did a farm apprenticeship at Heartwater Farm in southern Utah, and got to learn all about holistic management and greenhouses and ecology and soil biology and all those things, and came back to Salt Lake about 4 years ago and have been working with the Utah Permaculture Collective since then. So we've been meeting every Monday night, sharing skills together, potlucking together. This is a movement we're trying to spread far and wide. We believe every neighborhood deserves an awesome farm like this one, and a neighborhood group that can support each other and get these gardens installed and happening and eating fresh fruit and celebrating this kind of culture and lifestyle. And so that evolved to where we started meeting here at the Krishna Temple in Mill Creek. We would have our weekly meetings, and we saw this beautiful space in the back that was gardened a little bit, but not to the scale it is now.
So it already had a garden here when you started?
Yes,
then?
yes. It's been gardened here about 7 or 8 years, but over the last 3 years is when I stepped in, as well as my farm manager David Turner, and then our partner Randy Gordon was here the longest. So he was the one gardening here, and then David and I and the Ecstatic Dance community that meets here in the Permaculture Collective community all started meeting, and we said, let's just make this the awesomest thing. And since my wife and I, we have a lot of fun. So since my wife and I got married in the Spanish Fort Krishna Temple, it was kind of like, hey, can I help manage this? And it was kind of an in for us, and it was really good. So we've been doing that ever since, and this farm has just flourished over the last 3 years. We installed this greenhouse that we're in right now last winter, and it's really paid off. We've got tomato plants that are already to the ceiling.
So that they can kind of see how tall that tomato is compared to you.
Okay, cool.
Let's look at that tomato here.
Yeah, it's getting up there, isn't it?
Oh my word, that's huge.
Yeah.
How tall would you say that is?
Oh gosh, it's pushing 14, 15 feet, I think.
And what variety is that?
This is an atomic variety of tomato.
Okay.
And I've also got probably 30 plus different varieties in here. Some
Let's
of which
kind of pan around
I've lost
here.
the labels to, but we love just growing all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
So.
Now, is the height the genetic thing, or is it just the way you grow it?
It's also the way we've trellised them. So they're not going to get this tall if you just let them bush out and fall all over the place. You've got to trellis them. And so we use this single line, which is an interesting method to use to conserve space. Many people will have tomato plants that are much bigger spaces.
Right.
And have
Mine are
cages
bigger and
around
flat
them.
on the ground.
Yeah. So
because I don't have the time to do it. So.
This way we're able to get more fruit, more and bigger fruit per plant packed into a tighter space. And when you've got a greenhouse, which has additional cost to install the greenhouse, you can maximize all that you can get out of it. So that's where this comes from.
Well, this is beautiful. The reason I wanted to interview you is I love what you say about soil and how you build your beds and all of that. Tell me a little bit about that.
So soil biology is key. If you're feeding your soil, the rest of the farm can almost take care of itself. Plants just want to grow when you're paying attention to your soil. And so there's a big difference between the way conventional agriculture treats their dirt, right? It's basically just a medium for holding monocrops of plants, and they feed them with chemical fertilizers and pesticides to kill everything else, and the dirt just kind of holds the plant, and it's pretty biologically dead at that point. So soil, on the other hand, when it's healthy, has trillions of things happening. There's someone named Elaine Ingham, for instance, that has been known for talking about the soil food web, and I highly recommend looking her up and learning about the soil food web, because just like there's this microcosm and there's this macrocosm, right? The soil life is like its own universe. You've got earthworms, you've got bugs, you've got nematodes, you've got all these things happening, and you really don't want to disturb that. There's like a skyscraper of activity down there, and
I
nature
like that.
knows what it's doing, right? Nature has been working symbiotically with the plants, the soil, to produce what's needed. In fact, Elaine likes to say that even the most degraded soil technically has all of the nutrients that plants need. The problem is the plants can't get it because they don't have the beneficial fungal and microbial activity to ask in exchange for sugars, and there's this whole like
it's a network
world that's happening.
It's a complete network down there.
So we've chosen to move to a no-till system where we just don't tear up our soil, because we know those earthworms and those fungal and those soil biology is going to pay off by leaving it alone and continuing to feed it with high-quality compost and with a good series of nutrient supplements, which we've chosen to go vegan at this farm because so many of our community members that we serve with our CSA program are vegan, and we thought it was an extra challenge, right? So it's not like there's anything wrong with using animals in agriculture. In fact, it's necessary, I think, for the world to be healthy. But since we're in a city where we have access to so many powerful waste streams that we can turn into compost and food, we get around it. So we're able to grow all of our compost and make all of our compost with leftover scraps from the temple and the community here, and also from places like Vive Juicery. They bring us all of their waste brewery. We also have a person that makes CBD oils, and they bring us all of their hemp waste stream, and that turns into beautiful compost.
Yeah, I was going to say that would make great compost.
Oh, it's great. It's a nice fresh green and all that. So we mix that all up with wood chips or straw or whatever carbon's available, and voila, 3 weeks to 2 months later, you've got this perfect, rich, awesome, healthy, not ever bagged, not ever nuked compost that's just thriving with life. We feed that to our plants, and that's 95% of the battle.
Okay, look at these beds.
Yeah.
So can you go over a little bit about how you build these beds and what you put in them?
So our idea around these beds, one thing you'll notice is they're all the same length, okay? We've got 60-foot beds. It's really nice to have consistent length, because then you know what to do for each bed. You know how many amount of compost for each bed, how much nutrient for each bed, how many plants will fit in each bed. It just kind of makes the system a little more predictable. Another thing we've done is, if you'll notice that we're next to a greenhouse, all the water that pours off the top of the greenhouse is designed to fall into these beds and work their way to the end of the bed. So this is the greenhouse we're talking about. We put it in last winter. It's an 18 by 30. Oh, I'm sorry, it's a 30 by 60. Okay. And then we, in between our beds, we dug down about 1.5 feet between each of our soil beds, and we filled them full of wood chips. Not only to prevent weeds from growing, but also to capture all the water that comes off of this greenhouse and provide a nice spongy thing that's going to break down and feed the beds next to it. So that's one thing.
Well, that's a brilliant idea. I love that.
Yeah. If you have the ability, the labor to get it cooked out, it's really nice to fill it in with mulch like that. I basically did the same in my house too. And the thing is, we noticed too, we don't have much there's not much of a raised bed going on. The reason for that is we're in Utah. We don't need a lot of drainage because we don't get a lot of water.
No, we don't.
And so, even like going towards where it's sunken almost makes sense. You don't want to like drown your plants, but the rainy season is so short and the soil is so clay and it absorbs so much that if you can get it flat with the soil, flat with the pathway next to it, it's going to protect the plants a little more. They're not going to be so exposed to the elements, to the wind, to the sun. They're not going to drain too fast. And so, getting them at least level is a good idea.
That's a really good idea. I hadn't even thought about that in relation to Utah.
And then from there, we've got the drip line, of course, so that we can be really precise with our watering regimen and not waste any water, feed them directly to where the plants need it.
So these are soaker hoses rather than like the Netafim, right?
Yeah, so we save some money by using Netafim on the bases to create the joints, and then we used drip tape, which is about 1/10 of the cost of Netafim. Someday we might regret it. We might have to replace these in 3 or 4 years. A Netafim would last 20. So at some point you decide.
Well, it depends on
worth it.
Yeah, it depends on the lime in the water.
Yeah.
Mine have clogged already. It's been, well, I guess it's been 10 years. So yeah.
Gotcha. And so it works for us this way. And then, like I said, feeding it with compost is super important, and we use some extra amendments as well to help vitalize the nutrients and feed the plants. And
Now, what do you use? You say it's vegan, so what do you use?
Yeah, so our number one problem for most farmers is nitrogen, right?
Right.
All the green, everything that's green about plants, you want to have that. And so we've been using what's called alfalfa meal, which is usually
that's a
fed
great
to
source.
livestock, but it's also just a big source of nitrogen. So
Yeah.
we add some of that. We add kelp meal. We add, I'll often use azomite. I'll often use humates. It's kind of like concentrated composts that you'll add to it and helps feed the nutrients. And I mentioned kelp meal. So that's pretty much it in my bag of tricks. After we powder that out and then cover it with compost, we also use a broad fork. So that's a pretty major thing. When your beds do get compacted, it's nice to be able to run that broad fork and crack it, because instead of tilling, which completely resets all the soil infrastructure, the broad fork, you go in and just crack the soil pretty deep down. So water and the compost that we add on top first, and the air all feeds that and keeps the soil biology healthy and decompacts the soil without ruining the soil structure.
Without the tilling. Yeah.
So on a small scale like this, it's a fantastic tool for a small to mid-sized farm.
One of my favorite, when I first started gardening was back so long ago. It was when Elliot Coleman first had his TV show. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he talked about the broad fork and how it acted, because I love how he talked about going to the forest, see how the forest, functions, and then bring that to your garden. Exactly. And he said the broad fork was a lot like roots. It just breaks it up, makes a pathway for the earthworms, and it doesn't destroy the structure. So I love that you use that.
Yeah, we love that. And so that's pretty much the secret of it, and you've got to remember to pack your plants tightly, how you structure it so that there's not a lot of room for other weeds to grow. Mm-hmm. And as long as we don't get a whole lot of weed pressure, obviously there's bindweed and there's things that we deal with, but by making sure that there's always something growing in a bed, and as soon as it's time to cut them out, another thing we do is we cut them off at base level. We don't yank the whole plant and pull out its roots. Yeah. We go down to the base of the soil, cut it off level with the ground.
So more organic matter.
Plant next to that stump, so it's not in the way of the next transplant. And by the time you come back to want to be in the original spot, the soil biology is just eating it all up and turning it back into soil. So,
and taking all the nutrients that are locked in the roots and used them.
And so our mentors in this world, they've already gotten their farms up to 10% organic matter plus, and we're probably sitting at 3 or 4 at this point.
So how old is this farm?
This is it was a garden for 8 years, but I would say it's been a farm for 2 to 3 years, where we really upgraded it, and we brought a produce program for the community, and we've really wanted to make this something that's scalable and appreciable, even from a financial pleasurability aspect. I really believe that every neighborhood deserves a farm like this, and a community that is resilient and healthy and knows how to live in harmony with nature. And we grow humans here as much as we grow plants.
Yes, I love that.
The fact that they get to come out and bask in the glory of the diversity, the beautiful flowers, it's extremely healthy for people, way more so than just about any other activity you could get involved in.
Yeah,
so,
I agree. So for your regular homeowner, who maybe is not going to be able to do a full-scale farm like this, what can they do? One thing that they can do in their yard to kind of bring more of a permaculture feel to it.
Sure. Well, anywhere you've got soil, one easy one is all your coffee, if you drink coffee, all your coffee grounds can go right into your soil. You don't got to compost them, certainly don't throw them away, that's rich. Also, all your eggshells, so if you just crush them up and spread them around your beds, they'll eventually turn into calcium, they'll deter slugs, so eggshells and coffee grounds can go right into beds anywhere. And then you're kind of starting to feed that soil. So from there, plant something, even something small. Maybe you don't have a yard. Maybe you're in an apartment building, There's really beautiful baskets that you can make that would allow you to grow food or get used to your herbs. And I would just say, remember that when you're gardening, you're going to lose some plants. And some people kind of get like, oh gosh, I can't even keep a succulent alive, but you got to keep trying, and for me, I tattooed a green thumb on myself just to make sure.
So you had that. You have a green thumb.
I'll have the green thumb no matter how well my year goes. So
I love it.
So it's just a matter of sticking to it. And I like to remind people too that we're ancestrally DNA deep down, we know what needs to happen in a natural element. Maybe consciously we've kind of drifted from that as a society, but ultimately our body, our blood, our soul, we know what to do to foster life and create life. And so just trust in that a little bit. Get out into the yard, even if it's observation, where you're just going on enough nature hikes, or you got a nice sit spot in your yard to watch how things go throughout the year, and bring in a couple of plants a year. There's even really inexpensive ways to do it too. If you connect with people in your community, they're all about it. Everyone's got extra starts, everyone's got extra plants. You just got to connect and care about it, and the universe has a way of rewarding those that get as enthusiastic and giddy about this as I do.
Yes.
The same experience will be for you.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
I would love also to potentially transition to let David, who's my partner in this,
Oh,
talk
absolutely.
a little bit about his angle on how he treats soil biology. He's studied a lot. He's been our master composter, and I think he could price. This is David right here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
Turner.
everybody, this is David.
Turner.
Introduce yourself, because this is the first time I've met you too.
Oh, right on. Yeah, I'm David Turner. I'm the operations manager here at the Krishna Temple Gardens. Food forest, permaculture, things like that. Been here for, I think this is our third year now.
Okay. Yeah.
We have been trying to implement permaculture aspects into this property for about 3 years with the group, the Permaculture Collective.
Yeah. So now, the average homeowner, when they hear permaculture, they're like, okay, permaculture, so what exactly does that mean? Can you condense? I know it's almost impossible, but is there a way to condense what permaculture is so the average layperson can kind of know what it is?
Well, it's a regenerative design science. You can utilize permaculture if you're in an apartment building, right? Best way I would say if you're in a kind of seclusion situation like that would be like composting, right?
Okay.
Everyone can compost,
Right.
no matter where you're at. You can do vermicomposting, you can do bokashi composting, you can collect all your food scraps and bring them to a local composting group.
Yeah.
You know, so we have a couple of composting piles here that probably around 30 or 40 people bring their compost here.
Oh,
On
wow.
top of bringing our own nitrogen from different restaurants and juiceries around town. And we make a lot of compost. Last year we made about 120 yards by hand.
So I love it. So composting. So I always believe, and I started my YouTube channel talking about soil because I believe that gardening, permaculture, all of it begins in the soil.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of people talk about having green thumb, but it's not about the plants. It's about the soil.
It's about the soil. Yeah.
So generally I won't look very much at the plants. I'll look at the soil.
Right.
And that's kind of like the root of everything. You know, that's
Yeah,
where
that's where you get all the nutrients,
Yep.
all the water, all
Yep.
the exchanges happen there.
So a lot of what I do is I seek to create and foster microbiology. So when I
Right.
pick up a handful of soil, I'm thinking, is this going to foster biology? Is this somewhere where a large amount of bacteria can live?
Yeah.
You know, I want a huge diversity. I want I want it to be packed. And I'll even go as far as to look at it under a microscope and just
how
to
fun.
make sure, and get into like, doing slide counts and things like that, just to,
Yeah.
check out different types of soil and different stages.
So you really are into what the soil is and what it's holding and what it can do,
That's what it's all about.
other than what the plants are and what they're giving you. I mean, that's the end result, obviously, what you're
Yeah.
looking for, but the soil is, I love that. This is really amazing. Well, can you give us just a little bit of a tour?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So obviously we have our market garden.
Yeah.
It's in transition right now. Downtime for brassicas, uptime for nightshades. You can kind of see,
Yeah.
like our brassicas are doing fine, but
Yeah, I think they're beautiful.
really impressed with our cabbages.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So is this a diatomaceous earth
Yes.
that you put on it?
Yeah, this is diatomaceous earth. This is going to help keep the earwigs off.
Yeah.
And obviously we have a drip system,
Yeah.
so we're not watering from the top. That'll help with rot. And then we shade cloth everything to help control pests and
Right.
temperature.
I've seen people do that. Does that really help a lot?
Yes. Yes.
So you're not getting
it's-
the cabbage moth and
this time of year for cabbages, I would recommend putting on Agribond.
yeah.
Middle of July, beginning of August. It's the hottest time of the year. They don't
Yeah.
like the heat. In this area, we put down like 2 feet of mulch.
Oh wow, it feels
Right.
really spongy.
Yeah, it's very, very soft, really, really spongy. This is a baby food forest right now,
Uh-huh.
and this is what permaculture really seeks to
Let's
do.
move this way just a little bit. Yeah. there you go.
really seeks to do is to create an ecosystem, right?
Right.
And the more life, the better. So when I look around, you know, I don't just see a lot of weeds. There is
Right.
a lot of life, and that's the key, right? So around every single tree, around every single bush, there's something called a guild going on, right? And the guild is creating a symbiotic relationship with each tree. So the end result would be we have the 4 layers of a forest,
Right.
right? And everything is just, every layer is life, right? And we don't have to, we can step back, and instead of doing intensive care orchard, we can step back and it will act like a forest and do all of its own nutrient cycle, all of its own soil food web,
Right.
and bring in lots of biodiversity and create resiliency through a lot of different organisms interacting symbiotically with each other. So, you know, when I see a hawk or an owl or a bat, or if I see, you know, different animals running around out here, I'm really proud.
Because you've created an ecosystem for them.
Right.
Yeah.
And the apex predators around here are really letting me know, hey, there's enough life that I'm attracting.
Yes.
You know, I'm attracting different animals here.
Yep.
We have a pond over here where ducks show up.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I was wondering what that sound was.
Yep. We have a lot of ecosystem beginnings going on. Like I said, this is like the first 3 years. It should take about 5 to 10 years to fully establish
Right.
a permaculture design. And it's a lot easier when you have the money for it, right?
Yes.
So this project,
Unfortunately,
the only funding that we've ever received that was exuberant enough to count was for the greenhouse.
Right.
So we got a grant from the NRCS
Okay.
for that. But other than that, this is a self-perpetuating farm
Right.
with only 1 employee as of right now, and that would be me.
Yeah.
Everyone else is volunteering and doing hobby.
Yeah.
So I'm here every day working and just trying to keep it managed. But there's a lot
trying to manage my own
And-
property, and I think about that and the time it takes, and then
And as you
looking
can see,
at this
like,
huge.
there's all kinds of different stuff going on. We have volunteers in every corner. We have little projects going on in every corner.
Sorry about the sun, everybody. But, yeah.
Right, and this is happening pretty much every single day. And so it really comes down to just resource management and time management, and just trying to lean everything down so that we can actually work with the available hours that we have.
Right.
Because there just isn't enough time in the day to create
No, there is not.
what we need, what we want.
Well, good.
Let's walk over here to the herb garden. So this is a really good example of what I call initiative-led leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So we needed an herb garden, and enough people had talked about it, and eventually we were just like, well, let's just let somebody do it. So initiative, someone took the initiative, they become the leader in that initiative, and that's what this is all about, is creating an environment where once you form a relationship with the people and the land, you see what needs to happen and you mention it, and we all get behind you on it.
Yeah.
And so this beautiful
So how old
herb
is
garden-
the herb garden?
This is 2 years old.
Oh, it's just 2 years old.
Yeah.
And it looks like you might have some labels down here.
Yeah.
Like Artemisia, one of my
that's
favorites.
wormwood. We've
Yeah.
got oregano. We've got rue.
Yeah.
We've got horehound. We've got thyme.
Now, is
we've got-
horehound perennial in Utah?
Yeah.
Because that used to just grow almost wild in California.
Yeah. This is it's going to reseed and start taking
Yeah.
over. So we have to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
It's gone to seed right now. And there's another one over there. Echinacea, lovage,
See some bee balm over there.
lemongrass, bee balm, lavender, French sorrel. oregano, thyme. There's lots of
Lemon
basil.
verbena, my very
lemon
favorite,
verbena.
which is going to have to. Now, do you take that inside, or do you just let it go down, die down in the winter, and then replant?
Yeah, we let most of these just do their own thing. We'll replant some of them and just harvest seed. Like this French sorrel, we'll take seed off that and keep some for next year, and just put more of that seed around.
Yeah.
But we want it to kind of do its own thing. We, like Michael had said before, this is a veganic farm, so we don't use any animal products whatsoever. Everything's done by hand. Like all the compost is done by hand.
Which has to be exhausting.
Yeah, it's the hardest part.
Yeah.
But it's a good lesson, like I'll never do farming like this again.
No.
After I've done my 5 years here, I'll have my own property, and then I'll start using animal husbandry and letting them do the work for me. But, I'll really appreciate them at that point.
Thank you so much. I
sure.
appreciate the tour. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. I love what you're doing. I think we're going to end it here in the setting of this beautiful garden, and thank you for watching this video. If you would like to learn any more about permaculture, if you would like to maybe volunteer or help out, you can contact Michael on the permaculture, his Facebook permaculture page. Actually, yes.
Good example of a big old cabbage from our cabbage harvest we're doing right now.
It's really tiny. So Michael, if people wanted to volunteer or donate or something, how do they contact you?
So if you look up Krishna's Food Forest and Farm, it's on Facebook. It's also krishnafoodforest.org. You can donate through there. You could reach out to me, Michael Cundick. Our main email is info@krishnasfoodforest.org. One way to not miss us for sure is to connect with the Utah Permaculture Collective in general.
Okay,
it's
perfect.
a page and a Facebook group, and plenty of ways for you to get involved if the bug getting you. So
Yeah.
cool.
So go have a wonderful garden adventure.